Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Garden of Doom, and today, you would think with episode 51, I would be exploring Area 51 and having a UFOologist out here and, someone from the New Mexico desert. And, we've had Reverend Jim Williamson before who has had a museum in Area 51. But no, I surprise you with a little shocker. Now, I've been telling you that I've been searching far and wide for experts and scholars in various areas of expertise. And I don't lie to you. And today we bear witness to the fruits of some of my labors. My guest today is actually in Israel right now, from Israel, hails from Israel, and it's Rabbi David Levy. Rabbi Levy, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Yes,
it's actually funny that you said New Mexico, because I come from Mexico. I was born in Mexico, but that's another story. That's probably for another episode.
That could be another episode. I mean, I routinely have guests that as they talk and say interesting things, they book themselves for future shows, whether they want to or not sometimes. No, but that's really cool. I think that people never even consider that that's a possibility. But yes, so you are in Israel. You are a rabbi. I guess people should probably get a little background on you. So, you can sort of tell us a little bit about yourself, and you can start in Mexico if you like.
Okay, it's actually funny, the fact that I was born in Mexico. So again, my first language is Spanish. I happened to be in the States a couple of weeks ago, and it was funny seeing, first of all, I teach nowadays. I'm a rabbi that I teach in a yeshiva. That's an institute for Jewish studies. And when I got to meet my students, to see them, to visit them in the States, we would go to a restaurant or something, and I would talk to the Mexican cooks or the workers. I would talk to them in Spanish, so they got a kick out of it. I come from Mexico. I was born there. I was not religious at the time. And at a certain stage in my life, I decided to try to search for the meaning of life, as I think everybody or most of the people do this. So that's what I did. And somehow things led to the other, and I got to Israel. I got to a yeshiva, that's an institute where they teach all the Jewish studies. And I started to get more into Judaism. I started learning. I actually learned a degree in engineering. At a certain point, I decided that working with computers and working with people is two very, very different things. As you might agree, I figure...
Not some people. Some people, it's better to treat them as machines. They work function better. But yeah, generally speaking, yes.
So that's the direction that I took in life. I decided to start working with people, and I have a passion for working with people and with something that is very, very meaningful for me. That's the meaning in life. That's Judaism in a general way. And specifically speaking, I'm very, very attracted to all the Kabbalah. That means I can probably explain shortly what exactly is Kabbalah, why it means so much, why it has this magnet that actually got me a lot more into it. That's pretty much introduction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fantastic. Though I want to back up a little bit. So where in Mexico were you born?
I was born in Mexico City.
And how long did you live in Mexico before you found your way to Israel?
Right, so I was 21 years living there. My English, that's your next question, right? Where's my English?
Yeah, your English was great. It's, I hear an Israeli accent, I mean, with, or a regional accent, which, is only natural. Though, I'm guessing that you're probably, in your 30s somewhere?
I'm in my 40s, beginning 40s, 41 years old right now.
Good. Well, it's always safer to be young when you're younger when you're guessing. So you've been in Israel about almost half your life.
Yes, that's true.
And you picked up the accent.
Right, picked up the accent. It's funny because again, I say this a lot. I talk to my siblings. I have two siblings, and we both grew up with Spanish as our language. And I talked to both of them a lot of times in Hebrew. It just became a very, very natural language. English is more of I learned in an American school in Mexico, so therefore I picked up the English from a very young stage in life. But it's not something natural. It actually happens to be that Hebrew became a very, very natural language.
Were you born to Jewish parents?
Yes, both of them.
Is there a significant Jewish population in Mexico?
There used to be 45,000 Jews. I don't know what the situation is right now. There's more or less, but I think that's more or less the number nowadays.
And Mexico has about 135 million people in it?
Right. In the whole country it is. In Mexico City only it's 20 million people, so it's a very small Jewish population.
Wow. Yeah, I was in Mexico City once. Yeah, okay. That was interesting. It's an interesting digression. And so you were born Jewish, but you weren't particularly religious. And you are, I believe you told me you're an Orthodox rabbi?
Right.
What are the basic differences between Orthodox, conservative, Reform, and then maybe some of the, I think that a lot of people, especially a lot of my listeners, may not know there's differences. They sort of know there's religious Jews, there's non-religious Jews, and they probably lump Orthodox and Hasidic as one.
Right. So at least I'll tell you in a very general, in general terms, what Orthodoxy is. It means that the way that we see, the way we relate to the Torah that was given, we believe the Torah was given by God, that it was given through Moshe, through Moses, and we have the Torah as something there. It was given, and it also connects to Kabbalah. I'll explain it afterwards, but it was given in a written way. That is the same Torah that we have in Mexico, in Israel, in America, in India, wherever, all over the world, the different Jewish communities that have been outside of Israel for almost 2,000 years. After we grew up as a people, after we entered the land of Israel, we were spread out in the world for 2,000 years, and we have exactly the same scroll, the same written Torah that is one part of it, and the other part is the oral Torah. Now, the oral Torah has a lot of laws in it. It has a different. It's like the Jewish law code, or the Jewish code of law. I think that's a word for it. So Orthodox means that we stick to whatever was given down, was passed down through the generations as a Jewish law. which means, for example, if the Jewish law, the Torah itself says that one of the commandments, one of the 10 commandments, is you shall keep the Shabbat, or the seventh day. That means that translated in a way of oral Torah, the way we received the oral Torah, means that there are 39 different, they're called melachot, 39 different things that we cannot do on Shabbat. For example, turning on electricity, or turning off electricity, or turning on fire, or there's a bunch of different laws. So these laws, we take it, in Orthodoxy, we take them as relevant laws. Even nowadays that things have changed and there's technology and everything, but everything is the same, has the same relevancy. The same way as we see God as eternal God, so we see the Torah as an eternal Torah. So that's pretty much like, I would say that's pretty much the difference between Orthodoxy and conservative Reform Judaism, that has a little bit of different changes in it here and there.
Yeah, Reform is definitely much looser, much more flexible. Conservative, I guess, is sort of in the middle.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why this always cracked me up, but I know a lot of people who keep a kosher kitchen but aren't kosher anywhere else, and it always seemed to me that was a little bit, that's like being a little bit pregnant. But at the same time, people's belief systems and traditions, you don't judge it the same way that you judge biology, or I try not to. It's whatever floats their boat. I just find it I find it a little bit funny, but not like, scornful. All right. So enough about that. What is it? What's Hasidic? What is the difference there? Great
question. Hasidic means that to be, let's put it this way. I'll explain the word. What does a chassid mean? A chassid comes from the word chesed. Chesed is doing good, is being giving. To do chesed means to give out of love, to give out of devotion for somebody else. You love your wife, you give to her. You open yourself up, and it's represented with the right hand. I can explain a little bit more. I can elaborate more afterwards. But it's like the right hand symbolizes the art of giving. That is chesed. So a chassid is, I'll explain another word. There's another word in Judaism that is a tzaddik. Tzaddik is a just. Somebody that is a just, that means that if you ask him for something, he's going to do it. You ask him for something that is in the middle of the night, you wake him up, you tell him, please help me do this, he's going to do exactly what you asked him for. So that is a just. A Jew, according to the Torah, has to be just. There's even a book called the Path of the Just. That means how a person can do exactly what God wants from him. To be a chassid means that he does a little bit more than that. For example, you have a father that asks you for a drink. He asks for a cup of water. So a tzaddik, what is he going to do? A just, what is he going to do? He's going to take a cup of water, he's going to pour it, he's going to bring it really, really quick, and he's going to bring him the cup of water. But a chassid is going to go out of his way. He's going to choose a very, very nice cup. And he's going to put a little lemon. I don't know if they do this nowadays. Little lemon with the rainbow, with the, what's it called, with the umbrella on the side. A very nice napkin, probably a couple of cookies. He's going to go out of his way to do a little bit more than that. So the Hasidim, the group called Hasidim, is a group of Jews that started going on the way of, there was, I'll give a historical thing. There was somebody called the Baal Shem Tov. Probably you've heard of him. It's a known name, Rabbi David Baal Shem Tov. He lived around 400 years ago, and he started going deeply into the whole Kabbalistic part of the Torah, and he started revealing a lot of things. And one of the things that he revealed a lot is how a Jew should always be with joy, how a Jew should always be trying to give, how he should be, again, as we said before, not being just only, rather being a chassid, being more of a lover towards God and towards other Jews also. So nowadays in a demographic way, Hasidim are the followers of the Baal Shem Tov, the followers of this very, very big figure that lived around 400 years ago. He and his Talmidim, his students, started a very, very, I wouldn't say a new way of Judaism because it didn't change anything. Rather, probably the focus of things. It gave a new focus on life, a new focus on how to serve Hashem, that is God, in a more authentic, more happy, more again, giving way. That is Hasidim.
So if Hasidim are the right, can you be a lefty and be a Hasidic?
Right. So a lefty, it's interesting that a lefty was the way he was created in his body is that his left hand is stronger. In Kabbalah, the right represents giving, the left represents taking or stopping, putting limits in life. So that would probably mean, I haven't checked this before, I don't know if there is someone to check this, but it could probably mean that if there is a lefty, that means that his left hand is more dominant. That means that he's more of a limits person, right? It could be, I don't know, are you a lefty?
No, I'm not a lefty. Yeah, I almost thought that it was going to be like a silly joke on my part, but it seems to be deeper, which is good. I prefer that it's not just a silly comment. Sometimes I think like a 4-year-old. Well, if everything's about the right hand, then give me your right hand. Well, if you're a lefty, certainly you can train yourself to overcome and and adapt, to train yourself to be ambidextrous to an extent. So. Right. So is it safe to say that all Hasidic are Orthodox, but not all Orthodox are Hasidic?
Yes, 100%. All Hasidim actually are Orthodox, but in other Orthodoxy, again, there's different ways of seeing Judaism. So there are some that are called Lithuanian Jewry that is not Hasidic, that doesn't follow the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. And so, yeah, they're a little bit different. There's differences inside of them.
Yeah, no reason for you to be crying about that. It's amazing how you can talk and cry at the same time, though. That's
right. That's not me, of course. That's my son, but my wife is taking care of it.
Oh, okay. See, this is audio, but we're doing it on Skype. I'm talking to the listeners now, so I can see. So I know I'm making a joke, and he knows I'm making a joke, but the audience hopefully does too. If they've been listening to the show for a long time, they have an idea as to my sense of humor. If they just came upon this episode the first time, which happens, they might need a little bit of guidance from me on me. Sometimes I need some guidance from me on me. So just for the audience, and this is not really the basis of the show, but when you see the Jewish men in the black hats and all black robes and the long beards, basically the black hats and the black coats and jackets, no matter year round, that's sort of the uniform of Hasidic. But when you see folks that are walking Friday nights and Saturdays during the day, if you're in a suburb or a city where there's a Jewish population or anywhere, instead of driving, regardless of the weather, they're probably going to and from services or prayer or some communal religious event. And if they're not in that uniform, they're Orthodox. So that's sort of the telltale, the easy tell. Maybe in another show somewhere, someday we'll focus more on these subtle differences, but not for today. Today we're going to get into the more mystical. We're going to go into the mystic, as Van Morrison says. And yeah, so what got you into Kabbalah? Okay,
so great question. So I actually was learning in a rabbinical school at the time, and I got a lot of amazing, very, very different laws. I got to go deep into the laws and understand the laws and try to learn more and more and more. Again, to become a rabbi, there's a certain knowledge that you have to know exactly what is permitted, what is not permitted, in which stances. That is called halacha. Halacha is like the law system. Interesting that the word halacha comes from olech. Olech is to go, to walk. So that is what the Jewish I forgot the word. It's gonna happen a lot. These words here and there. Again, English not being my natural first language, but what the Jewish chachamim, you say it. It's the Jewish elders. What they say about halacha, they say a certain saying that goes like. There are 2 meters of halacha, 2 meters of law. I don't know how much would that be in feet, but in Hebrew it's called arba amot. It's 4 amot. It's a certain measure.
It's probably about 7'2", 7'4", something like that.
Okay, so there's these 7.2 feet of halacha. What does that mean? So the different books explain.
I think it's more like 6'6", but we get the point. It's a
It's
basketball player.
Let's stick to the Hebrew part of it. It's 4 amot. Amot is a measure. So what does that mean? 4 amot of halacha, or what is this measure all about? So some explain that the way that you follow the laws is not exactly in one line. It's not like there's one line, either you do it or you don't, and that's it. Rather, it has a certain measure that you can be in these 2 meters. Sometimes you're going to be able to follow one side of it. Sometimes you're not going to be able to follow one side of it. Rather, you have to be lenient and to follow another side of it. So again, all of this is in rabbinical school. We learned this. I was learning at the time. It was very interesting, and at the same time, I felt that there was something missing. And turns out to be afterwards, I started trying to understand and trying to learn more about the mystics of Judaism, as you called it, the Kabbalah. And that is where I noticed that there's 2 sides to the Torah itself. The 2 sides are, one is halacha, as I said, and it's also represented. It's interesting that the word halacha also has rearranging the Hebrew letters. It's also kli, a kli. There's a kli, there's a certain utensil that comes out of it. In other words, there's a utensil, and the utensil, if you wanna drink water, you need a cup. You need water. So the cup is the halacha, are the laws. All the laws that you have to know. You have to have policemen in a normal country, first world, how do you call this? First world country?
I think we use developed now, but yeah, because there's no second world anymore.
Okay, so a developed country, for example, like America, has to have a police force, the policemen that work, that know when to put the limits. That is again represented by the left hand, as we said before. But at the other hand, on the right hand, you have to have something that drives the people to do good, drives the people to live. If you have policemen all the time and they're very, very strict, that doesn't mean there's going to be happiness in the country. It doesn't mean that there's going to be light in the country, that people are going to be living a good life. Rather, they're going to have the strict measures of knowing what to do. So I started feeling that that was happening to me, and I needed something else, something deeper. And somehow I got to know this, my rabbi, that he received a lot of deep mystic teachings from very big you call it tzaddikim, very big Jewish figures from the last generation. And I met him randomly. We say that there's nothing random in Judaism, there's nothing random in this world. There's God putting you exactly in the right place at the right time. So I met him and I started learning from him. I started being in his classes and learning more and more and more. I got very, very attached to him, and I started getting a lot into this mysticism of Judaism. And that is what gave me a lot of light. So again, instead of saying water and the cup, it's more like light and the cup. I don't know if there's like a thing like that, right? You have fire, you have to have the fire in a certain way that it doesn't burn everything else around you. So that's what got me into learning this the mysticism.
So let's take us through. So let's take, I think that most people, at least in North America or the United States where I am, really, we sort of heard of Kabbalah, but, it became sort of vogue. I don't know when, it was maybe the late 80s, the early 90s, and Madonna, said that she was studying it. So then everybody knew what Kabbalah was, and everyone wanted to be part of it. And then that went to, it became yoga, then hot yoga, or whatever, Pilates, or whatever the fad of the year is that seems to come and go. But, it's still there. And I think that all that we were left with is, it's sort of mystical, it's sort of shamanistic, and it has a lot to do with numbers. So that's obviously extremely primitive, probably partially incorrect completely, and certainly an unfair simplification. So give us a better definition of what is Kabbalah and actually pronounce it properly, because I keep botching it up, I'm sure.
Okay, great. So first of all, again, going to the root of the word. What is exactly the word Kabbalah? So Kabbalah means to receive, means receiving. And as we said before, again, if you have a kli, if you have this utensil, you can receive. What do you receive? So first of all, it's receiving the Torah itself. As I said at the beginning, I explained that there is a written Torah and there is an oral Torah. So the written Torah, we can all see what it says. There are translations of it, and there's again, it's the same exact Torah as we have all over the world. The oral Torah that was also given at the time when we got the written Torah, again, we believe going into a historical, the historical, how to say this, the historical facts or whatever it is, like in history, we received the Torah back then at Mount Sinai, or Har Sinai, we say it in Hebrew, and we received the written Torah. We also, the sages explain that we also received the oral Torah. That means that the same way as if you would have a manual, for example, for a watch. So this manual tells you exactly how to use a watch. Now, with nowadays modern world, modern technology, what I used to remember as a watch, or let's go back to the cell phones. I remember the first cell phone that came out at the time. When I was young, it was like a huge thing, right? Exactly, and to carry it, you needed a whole suitcase for it. So nowadays, technology is so different, and if you would have a manual of the telephone, a portable phone back then, it would be nothing compared to what it is nowadays. So the Torah, in order to be something that with the time is still relevant, it was given at the same time with the oral Torah. The oral Torah is something that it doesn't really change, but the examples change all the time. So it's something that can't be written down. If you write it down, that means that it can't change anymore. So the written Torah was given with the oral Torah. And here we go a little bit deeper, and what the sages explain is that there's 4 different facets of the Torah that all apply to the written and the oral Torah. So what are these 4 facets? In Hebrew, it's called pardes. It's like a field. Pardes is a field. Just explaining the word. But
is it a coincidence that it sounds like paradise?
Very interesting. Very interesting. It could be. There's a lot of words that come from the same. Amazing. Never thought about it. But so if we take the Hebrew word pardes, it has 4 different letters. One is pe, pa. It's called pei. The other one is r, reish. There's dalet, d, and there's s, samech. So what does each one represent? So the pei represents pshat. That means the simple word, what it says. When the Torah says, in the beginning, God created the world, again, just very, very translating it in a wrong way because there's so much depth to it. But what it says what the words say, those are the words, and you don't change them. It says that. It says that God created the world, and it was created in 6 days, and then the 7th day it was the Shabbat, that he rested, etc. That is a pshat. If you go deeper into it, there's a remes. There's all kinds of different letters. There's all kinds of different words that appear twice, 3 times, 4 times, and the sages connect the words, connect the letters. They start explaining everything based on these letters and words. There's a drash that is a little bit deeper than that there's a lot of different stories that come with the Torah itself. And then there's the secrets, that is the sod, the samech, the last s. So that is what the deeper part of the written Torah, together with the oral Torah, has behind the scenes. And what does that mean? That when you read the written Torah, and then you read the oral Torah that talks about the written Torah, like we said, the manual of the written Torah, and then you read what the Kabbalists had to say about this oral Torah and the written Torah, about that thing, that verse that you just read, it takes a completely different mystical way of understanding it.
Can I ask you a question here? Who writes down? I mean, we've got the written Torah. We know who wrote that, and it's been rewritten. Exactly, strictly. Like you said, every culture in the world, every country in the world where there's Jews, they're reading from the same Torah. Now, the oral, obviously, it was spoken, but somebody's writing it. So who's writing down the oral Torah that you're reading? And the oral Torah sort of checks off on, as you said, it evolves, it changes over time with different examples. So like, is there some committee or body that checks off and says, yes, this is our universal addition to the oral Torah that, goes to the diaspora?
Right. So again, as I said before, the oral Torah, you can't really write it down. And it says that the oral Torah is something that you can't write it down, but it was written down. So how can it be? So we go down through the generations of Judaism from Moses back then, that he passed down the written Torah as it is. And some generations, I don't remember exactly how many, like probably 4 or 5 generations after that. Actually, no, sorry, a lot more generations passed. And it was around the year 600, 700 that the rabbis decided at the time that because the generations were losing the ability of remembering all of these different things that were at the time, that they knew at the time, that was passed on from generation to generation, they should write it down. It should be written down, and it should be very clear. So therefore, that is when they started writing the oral Torah, again, as some kind of a necessity at the time, even though it's not okay to write this, because it's still going to we still want it to be relevant. But at the time, that was what they had to do. So the oral Torah was written. And it's interesting that every generation, there's always something added on to this oral Torah to make it relevant to the generation that is right now. Again, for example, using cars on Shabbat, as I said, it doesn't say anywhere that you can't use a car. That's actually what I understand some Reformed sources say, that, they didn't have cars. Nowadays, cars is a commodity, so why not use it? So the Orthodoxy says, yeah, but it says that you cannot light fire. You cannot ignite fire. So the same fire that you're ignited by turning on the car is the same fire that it says that you cannot use it. So therefore, because you cannot use it, the source is of the oral Torah, so you can say that you cannot use it. So therefore, there had to be another book that was written about the new generation. And then there was a new generation that had something else, something newer. So there was, again, the sages that got together and they continued writing the oral Torah. In every generation, it was passed on from generation to generation again. So yeah, so what is this comedy, as you're asking? So the comedy is a committee. Am I saying the word right?
A committee, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the committee is actually a group of rabbis that are the leading rabbis of the generation.
There is one.
Right. Usually you can see the difference if you see a book like the Maimonides Code of Law that he wrote. There's nobody nowadays that can really write a book with such depth and such understanding, and that gets exactly every facet, every question, there's books and books and books that have been written about Maimonides. So when you see somebody like Maimonides and you try to say, okay, so it was just a rabbi, it wasn't just a rabbi, it was a very, very big rabbi at the time. So again, every generation has its leading rabbis that they very, very learned in a much broader way than me, for example. The fact that I'm a rabbi doesn't mean that I'm in the same level as a chief rabbi of Israel or the chief rabbi or whatever it is. There's always like the leading rabbis and there's the small rabbis. So the leading rabbis are the ones who got together and passed on the Torah on. So again, just going back to Kabbalah was also passed on from generation to generation. And it was actually not written at the time until the times of a sage called Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is he wrote the Zohar. Zohar, probably you've heard of this before. It is right. It's a more famous book. So the Zohar is, let's put it this way, it's like the blueprint that we have nowadays in Kabbalah or Kabbalah. Right? You're not saying it wrong. It's just like two different ways of saying it. Israelis will say Kabbalah, and Americans will say Kabbalah. So it's actually right both ways.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I have heard of the Zohar, and I think you're about to get into sort of what that's about. Is there any relationship between the name of Zohar and I believe there's an old religion called Astro-Zoharianism? Is the Zohar in there? Is that root at all similar, or is that just another one of the world's, sort of odd coincidences?
It could be. I won't be surprised. I'll put it this way: we believe that anything spiritual in this world like you said, there's a lot of different spiritual things going on in the world. We believe that everything stems down from the same exact God that gave the Torah down. And actually, it's very interesting that there's a lot of words, for example, in Hinduism, that a lot to words in Hebrew also. For example, there's a Brahma and there's Abraham. It's also like rearranged words. There's probably more where I remember hearing one time hearing about very different things that have to do with the Eastern spiritual religions, whatever it is. I heard that there's like a lot of different things that are very connected to Judaism. So it could be, for sure, it could be that it's based on the Zohar or based on the teachings of the Zohar. Right. There's, again, it's something that is very, nowadays, with nowadays technology, you can get to a copy of the Zohar anywhere. There's probably translations in English, translations in different languages also. So that is really the root of Kabbalah.
So the Zohar is sort of, it's not the manual, but it's sort of almost the manual, or is it the manual?
I would say it is. The thing is, Zohar is also a word for light. It wasn't really written as a book by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He didn't suddenly say, okay, I'm going to write a book that's going to change the world. He didn't think of that. Rather, he taught, he spoke the oral Torah. And according to one of the sources, one of his talmidim, one of his students called Rabbi Abba, he actually wrote all the teachings that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said. And that was put in a certain way, it was arranged according to the sections of the Torah in a way that we have it nowadays. So it wasn't made to be a book, rather it's a lot of teachings put together in a book, and nowadays it's called the Zohar. He didn't really want to call it the Zohar, rather it's called the Zohar because it starts off with a verse that says that the words will be like the Zohar Arakia, like the light of the atmosphere. So it's really like the light. The book is really called the light. We refer to it as light. Again, connecting to what we said before, it's really the light that gets into the vessels, into the kalim.
Nothing wrong with light. So yeah, let the light in. Let there be light. What would be, what would you say are the main tenets or principles, or if you were to say, this is Kabbalah, Zohar 101, and here are the 5 points or 7 points or 18 points you need to know, like, how would you tell it to someone like me who knows the bare minimum?
Okay, so first I'll tell you what, it's before we get into that, I want to major out a point, a very, very important point, I think, to understand this also. That is, one of the big rabbis, Hasidic rabbis, he was called the Rebbe or the Rabbi of Piazetzna. Piazetzna it's some kind of a place, a city in Europe. He was actually killed in the Holocaust, and he writes a very, very interesting essay that talks about learning Kabbalah. One of the things that he says is that anybody can actually learn the texts of Kabbalah. As you said, there's a lot of numbers in it. There's Madonna. There's all kinds of different people, that superstars that we hear nowadays. They dress in white on the Sabbath, on the Shabbat, everything, all of these things. But actually, he says a very interesting point that is called Kabbalah. That is learning. It's the same way as you take a encyclopedia or you take a book of the Eastern civilization. You can learn it and you can know things and you can be a very, very smart person, etc. But he says there's a deeper part to it that is called Sod. As we said it before in the 4 different words, remember the Pardes? It sounds like paradise. So we said that the secrets are the last word, the Sod. So he says he quotes a verse that says, Sod Hashem lireav, the secrets of Hashem, that is God, to those who fear him. What does that mean? That God reveals himself, reveals the secret, the inner secrets, to those who fear him. He explains that you can learn a lot about. It's, for example, there's a couple, and the couple are living in a certain place, and the couple are very, very famous. And there's all these photographers, there's all these newspapers that want to learn about this couple. and they start learning about them, or they start learning about one of them. For example, they start learning about the husband. They want to know about him, and they start taking all kinds of pictures and knowing things about him, about his life, about where he grew up in, and how old is he, etc. All these things, and at the end of the day, they know a lot of facts, but the secrets only his wife is going to know. Why? Because he's going to reveal her. So same way over here, when we're talking about Kabbalah, we can talk about a lot of different things. The question is, when a person starts learning them, he can actually have a relation. That is the bottom line of Kabbalah. Why should we learn this? Or why is it a big thing? Only to get light in my life? That is what I want, light, so therefore I'm going to learn this. So the answer is, again, as we see it as an Orthodox rabbi speaking, the answer is no. It's not the fact of just knowing because you want to know different things, because you want to have an amazing spiritual experience. Rather, because there is a commandment that we have to know God, we have to know Him because we have to be close to Him. I'll tell you a very nice, again, in parentheses, like making a very nice statement about this. The first time that the Torah says that somebody had a relation, that means Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Chava. So the pasuk in the verse, I'm sorry, I'm using all these Hebrew words, I'm used to them, but I'm trying to explain. So the verse that the Torah uses is V'Adam yada et Chava ishto, and Adam knew his wife. It doesn't say that he had relations with her. What does that mean? That means that yada, he knew her. Knowing is like having relations in a spiritual way. Again, when you know a person, that means you have a relation with the person. Right? If it's a man with a wife, the more he knows his wife, and the more that's intimacy. Intimacy stems from the fact that you know each other more. When you tell secrets to one another, the intimacy becomes stronger. So that means that knowing God means knowing His secrets, understanding Him better, understanding why He created the world, how He created the world, etc. So that's again, in a general way, it's very, very important to get this in a place where when we talk about Kabbalah, we can talk about Kabbalah I can give you a lot of different facts right now, but again, the facts are not going to really make any sense like put together. So what about these facts? What do I do with them? So the main thing and the main focus is understanding the learning Kabbalah is learning about God, is learning about the secrets of God. And by learning about these secrets, we are complying, we're following the commandment of knowing God.
Okay, so we know what the big picture goal is, and I guess what's different about Kabbalah than other Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Taoism, whatever religions the Lakota had, but everyone, almost every people out there have something about getting to God. So what is it about Kabbalah that's unique and different, and what is it that sort of has attracted people all over that says, wow, that's interesting?
So I would say in the spiritual world, it's interesting that the world used to be a world where being an engineer or being a doctor would be, those were the jobs, that's where college students went to. And nowadays we see a lot of people learning psychology, learning all kinds of spiritual how do you call this? Spiritual sciences, or things that are a lot more spiritual than physical, that what used to be. So why is this so? Because there's so much light that fills a person. Again, I can tell you this as an experience, that every time that I learn these things, it gives me a lot of light. I can be having a very, very difficult day, very hard day, and having a lot of pressure from different things. And suddenly when you sit down and you hear a little bit of words of this mysticism, Jewish mysticism, you get something out of it. It fills you with light, and then you just go on with your day. Exactly the same problems that you had before, you have them right now, but now you're happy. Now everything makes sense. Now everything has in other words, you put God into the picture. And I think that's what attracts so many people, and that's what made it become such a big thing.
Okay. And I know that numbers and numerology is very tied into it, and I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit on that. Is that first of all, is it even accurate, or is that just sort of a urban legend?
Yeah, for sure, it's very, very accurate. It's every letter in Judaism has a numerical value. So for example, Aleph is the first letter. It represents 1. Interesting that it represents also, I'll tell you again, a very nice explanation about it. There's a rabbi called Rabbi Akiva Tatz that he speaks a lot about this mysticism. I would say, I don't know if at some point you're probably going to ask, like, where else can we find about these things? So one of them is Rabbi Akiva Tatz, that he teaches he has a lot of different classes on spirituality in a general way. And he said this following thing, a very, very interesting thing, that Aleph, the first letter, in different languages, it also represents big things. For example, elevate or elephant, right? So, or the Aleph, I think it's also a thing nowadays. Like to say Aleph, I think it's a universal thing nowadays. So why is it such a big thing? Because it has a numerical value of 1. Every time that there's an Aleph, that there's a 1 in mysticism in Kabbalah, it refers usually to God. To God, as we say in our prayers, we say this like at least twice a day. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That means, hear Israel, Hashem, or that is the way of calling God. He is our God, and He is one. So this oneness that we refer to Him is a spiritual oneness. So that is the numerical value of 1. When you have the second letter is Bet, it has a spiritual value of 2. For example, we meet the first time we meet the letter Bet is at the beginning of the Torah. It says Bereshit at the beginning. So the Kabbalistic sources ask a question: why does it start with the Bet? It should have started with an Aleph, right? Because God created the world. So there's a lot of different explanations that are brought down in Kabbalah, again, because it's this world is a dual world. It always has 2. In order to create children, you have to have a man and a wife. In order to have a plant grow, you have to have the seed and you have to have the ground. In order to make electricity possible, you have to have a plus and a minus. So everything works with 2 people. When we're talking right now, you and me, Jeff, so we're having we're engaging in a conversation that is bringing a lot of things that we probably wouldn't have brought if it was only you or it was only me. So this world,
certainly if it was only me, be very short.
So this world has a duality all the time. So that is why the world was created. The physical world was created with the letter B, with the letter Bet, because it's 2. Then there's 3. As for example, Judaism, the sources talk about having a table. There's having a table that stands on 3 legs. When you have 2 legs, it doesn't really stand. When you have 3 legs, it's better than 2 legs. It's on 4 legs. 4 is a bigger number, but again, there's all this numerical value has a lot of mysticism behind it. The letters themselves also. And when you take full verses and you see that the numerical value of the full verse, sometimes it gets to the thousands. Yeah, there's a verse that is 1,108. So, and when you take another verse that has the same numerical value and you see that they're very, very connected, that is again just getting a taste of what Kabbalah is all about. You can see all this numerical value relevance that there is in the written in the verses that we have in the Torah.
So I can't even tell you the source, but it was earlier this week I was listening to something. I barely read. I listen to podcasts. I'm a lazy intellectual, or just lazy. And I had heard that if you utilize Kabbalah and the numerology, that almost every verse in the Bible, or every verse in the Bible, has 72 different interpretations. Is that accurate?
I heard 70 different interpretations. It says Shivim Panim LaTorah. There's 70 facets to the Torah.
Well, I'm going to go with you over the other person. I'm pretty sure didn't have Rabbi before there.
I will tell you there is something that is 72. There's 72 different interpretations of the first word of the Torah. That is Bereshit.
Well, probably
that's it.
Well, 70 or 72. Maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't, but that's a lot of different interpretations. So, I mean, do people sit around and argue over which interpretation it is, or do the interpretations apply to different circumstances? I mean, how does one navigate? I mean, listen, I mean, not to beat up too much or oversimplify the Christian church, but they've had a lot of people have died over whether or not Mary was divine or not. A lot more people have died over whether or not Jesus was the Son of God or a prophet, or even existed in history alone. Now you got 70 different interpretations for every verse in a book that's thousands of pages long. Regardless of which language is translated into. How does that get resolved? Is it that same committee? Is it? I mean, where do they find the time? Are they clones?
Amazing. Yeah, right. Amazing. So first of all, there's no question in Judaism about, for example, which organ should the circumcision be done. There's no question which day is the Sabbath. There's no question if you can turn fire on or not. These things are something that is a very set thing. The different interpretations in the Torah, they stem, at least what we have, the sources that we have, they stem not from different ways of we just read the text and you understand one way, I understand the other way, and you're right and I'm wrong, or the other way around. We don't look at it that way, especially in Kabbalah. When we look into the mysticism, what does it mean to have 70 different facets? So 70 is a number that represents, again, if we talked about the Aleph before, it's a very interesting thing. The Aleph is a sound, a certain sound, like an A sometimes, it's like a silent sound. There's another letter that is very, very similar to the Aleph that is called Ayin. Ayin is, Yemenites have a different accent of pronouncing it. Instead of saying ah, they say ah. But it's almost like it's very, very similar. Ayin is a numerical value of 70. So what does it mean, like 1 and 70, and what is the difference? So I'll tell you a very nice thing about it. It's interesting that you said about the number 70. The Torah says at the beginning that Adam and Eve had bodies that were kutnot or. They had bodies of light bodies. Not only light and a lightweight, rather they were filled with light. And after they sinned, God made them kutnot or, with an ayin, with a 70, numerical value of 70. What does that mean? That the garments became something physical, right? So from having light, it became physical. Now, the word or is skin. Technically, you're translating it is skin. So beforehand, it was light, and now it's skin. The only difference in the word or and or is, instead of having 1 as a numerical value, as we said, 1 is spiritual, there's one God, there's oneness in the spiritual world. Instead of that, it became 70. It became 70 different ways. The Torah talks, the sages talk about 70 different nations, 70 different languages that, again, probably are like the roots of the languages. But a 70 is a way of saying there's a lot, right? So what does that mean? That even though in this physical world, there's a representation of 70, there's 70 different ways of seeing it, but everything stems down to the same oneness that was before. Only in this world we see it as 70 different ways of seeing it. So in Kabbalah, we relate to this 70, or to this lot of different ideas, a lot of different ways of seeing it. We relate to this as everyone's right, as long as it stems from the same piety, the same fear of God, of learning this and having all of the picture. In other words, when you have
that sort of one rule, that rules them all, whatever 70 interpretations you take is okay, as long as that one rule, which is to seek knowledge of God through a healthy fear of God. Am I sort of saying that right?
I would take it a step further, because let's say nowadays I see a script and I say, okay, my idea of it is so and so and so. Does that enter one of the 70 facets? So no, of course not. Why not? Because the 70 facets that we have is something very, 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 first of all, from long time ago, from the very, very big sages that are like, I don't know if you put it in numbers, it would be like 1,000,000 times wiser than me. They knew all of the Torah in its entirety, with all the different phases, with all the different levels and all of different mysticism involved in it. So when they said it from a place that their souls were different. Each soul is different, and each soul has a different understanding of God. And the way that they refined their souls was in such a place. When they say something, it's not the same as if I say something. It's something that a very, very, very big sage is saying. So therefore, I look at it as wow, he said one thing, he said another thing, both put together. All of this is part of the truth. The truth is really one, but it has 70 different facets in it. I can give an example if you want, just to have a little bit of understanding.
I'm sort of like in one of those funhouse mirrors right now where, I'm still me, but there's like an infinite, I don't know. Yeah. Why don't you give your example? I think it's probably going to be better than mine.
I guess so. For example, the world was created. It says Bereshit bara Elokim. The Torah starts off when the world was created, and doesn't say when it was created. So in the oral Torah, we have two different opinions. We have an opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. We have an opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. There are two different sages, very big sages that we're talking about 2,000 years ago. So one says it was created in a certain month called Nisan, and one said it was created in a certain month called Tishrei. So both are 6 months apart. In other words, one is in the middle of spring, the other one is in the middle of fall. So who's right? Right away, like everybody, okay, so one of them is right, one of them is wrong. It can't be that the world was created in both different, in two different times.
I'm still wondering how something gets created and there's already a month. So it's already in the season.
That's great. That's a great question. That's another question. There's so many questions. There's so many. That's the beauty of the Torah. It's one of the things that one of the sources say that the Torah is infinite. It doesn't really have like an end, because the more you delve into it, the more questions come up, and the more you learn about them, and the more light it sheds upon a person.
So I have two thoughts bouncing around my head, and I need to get them out, or I won't be able to focus properly on what you're saying. One is trivial, and the other one maybe isn't. So the one trivial one, when you're talking about that they were made of light and then it became form, the only image that keeps going in my head is the Star Trek transporter, where they're being beamed aboard. You see the light, and then it forms. So I had to say it. So now we can put it on the side, and that's completely trivial. The other thing is that, listen, I am fairly well aware that the actual word and entity that people talk about as Satan now actually was maybe mentioned once or never in the Bible, and there's other doctrines or books or sources that listed Satan as either just one of many of sort of rebelling angels, or it was like a rank like lieutenant or captain or something like that. But a lot of people think Satan and Lucifer are the same. And the only reason I'm doing this whole little story here, which, a lot of it is story, and a lot of it I know doesn't even come from biblical and doesn't come from the Old Testament Bible at all, is that Lucifer, as I understand it, means the light one. So, I mean, it's almost like, Lucifer, who, is supposed to be the bad angel, or the leader of the bad angels, is the light one. And so is that something that anyone's ever brought up and said, well, how do we distinguish that? And also to back up a little bit on some more of my primitive, lazy intellectualism, I've been told that one of the differences between men and angels is that humans, we have free will, the angels didn't. And of course, there's some stories out there where the angels may have exercised free will, not always in the best way. And so I'm not sure if the difference is simply, well, Lucifer might have been called the light one, but had no free will, so not a man. It doesn't apply here. Then it's going to be incomplete for me, if that's
right. I don't know where the word Lucifer comes from. If it's if it's a Jewish thing, I don't remember seeing any source quoting that name. But the first word, Satan, he is mentioned in the oral Torah, and it's interesting that he's mentioned also. First of all, what is he? He's an angel. He's an angel, as there's very, very different other angels that God has. An angel is like a messenger of God. So he sends different messengers to do different things. So one of the messengers that he has is him. the Satan, I call him the bad guy because we try not to say the name itself. There's other names that are actually quoted in the different books that a sage called the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. He was a sage that came after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that he explained Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and from him we have all of the Kabbalistic teachings nowadays. So he says in a very clear way that we should try not to say all kinds of names of angels, because again, our words do something. Our words cause different things when we say something. So that's what I try not to say, but I call him the bad guy. The bad guy is the same as the evil inclination. I don't know if you've heard this before. So evil inclination is the one that takes me right now. And when I'm sitting alone by myself and there's a very, very big ice cream, Ben & Jerry's, I don't know which one do you like. I love the chocolate one, right? It's sitting in my inside my fridge, inside my whatever, right? I have it in the kitchen and there's nobody in the house. And I know that I shouldn't eat it because I'm on a diet, but I know that I really, really want it. And the evil inclination starts telling me, listen, just taste a little bit of it. Just a little bit of it. Nothing's going to happen, whatever. Nobody's going to see it and whatever. And you can just say that you diet, whatever, and you're okay with it. And you take one spoonful and then you start thinking about another thing. And then you take another one. And that before you know it, you finish the whole thing. That is the evil explanation. The evil inclination, sorry. So that's the same one as the angel of death, the same one as the one we said before. It's all the same kind of angel that represents itself as evil. So it doesn't have light inside of it, even though it's interesting that in the Hasidic books, again, based on the Baal Shem Tov, as we said before, even the evil inclination has a good part of it, a good part to it. Where does it represent itself? For example, humankind. If we wouldn't have the evil inclination, there wouldn't be any children. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure,
so we have to have the evil inclination in a certain way, but it has to be put in the right way. We have to understand that there is light over there, but it has to be very, very used in the correct measures with the correct limits. So again, probably it explains the other name that you said. Again, I don't think it's a Jewish name, but it does have some kind of light inside of it. Interesting that in the Jewish sources, the name of this evil side, the bad guy, his name is very similar to a name that is a very holy name. So again, the teachings of the Hasidic teachings explain that it's the same exact thing. That there's gonna come a time where again in the great salvation or the redemption, as we call it, that this bad guy is gonna be, the bad part of the bad guy is gonna be taken out, and he's gonna be left with only good part of it that we're still gonna use, that we're gonna have to eat the ice cream in the right way with the right measure, and to have the again every impulse that we have, using it in the right measure. So again, it's something I hope you get you more or less understood.
All things in the right amount. All things in moderation.
Right.
But a prescribed moderation. It's not one that you judge for yourself, because my moderation might be the whole pint. Yeah, and that's why my camera only goes from sort of the mid chest. Okay, so back to I took you on a little digression, asking you about a name that doesn't even exist in Judaism. So the simplest explanation probably is just that the word for light was borrowed. Just like the Romans took the Greek gods and the Greeks took the Egyptian gods, and some of the language carried over and some of it didn't. Anyway, enough about me trying to draw points and connecting them when there's no connection. We were on the 70 faces of the vessel, basically of one, and you had given the example, and then I took you off on, I went to start with Star Trek and then into the bad guy. So if I haven't taken you too far afoot of where you were, if you still have your footing, if you can just pick it up where you left off.
Yeah, okay, so we said that there's two different ideas of when the world was created. Was it created on the month in the middle of the spring or in the middle of the fall? And if both opinions are two different facets of the 70 faces of the Torah, then how can it be? One of them is right, one of them is wrong. So the Arizal, as I put it before, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, that came after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he lived around 500 years ago, more or less. So he explains it, that both are true, both are correct. How can it be? So he explains it with a physical example, even though right after this example, I wanna make a point out of this physical example. He says the same way as a child is created and he is born, it's not at the same time. There is the pregnancy, when the seed is put together, the two seeds are put together, and then the child starts growing in the womb, the fetus starts growing in the womb. So that is the conception. The concept, right? It's called conception. That's the right word.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
So the conception happens at a certain time, and only 9 months afterwards, the birth happens. So both are the beginning of something. So that's the way Rabbi Yitzchak Luria explains that both are right. One is talking, Rabbi Yoshua is talking about the birth itself, and Rabbi Eliezer is talking about the conception itself. So it's two very different things. One is more in a potential beginning, and the other one is more in a physical beginning.
Well,
and it makes a lot of sense with different sources that connect to that. What?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one that the Supreme Court's been trying to avoid since the 1970s. That exact question. I have a much simpler explanation. Now, I didn't go to rabbinical school, but it seems to me that without going into the point of conception, the answer is one of them was in the northern hemisphere, one of them was in the southern hemisphere. Same exact time, different season.
Okay. But again, the problem with this is that if we're talking about the spring or fall, we're talking in a general way. The general time being the time of Israel. It's again, it's a spiritual thing that whatever happens in Israel is seen as a center of the world in a certain way for Judaism. So everything is based on that time. What?
The whole debate, mine doesn't work, but the whole debate is there is one geographic point. There is not.
Right.
We don't get
very nice explanation. Though. Liked it.
It was a fair try.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I get it. Okay, so then we do have to go back to the duality.
Okay, so one thing about that I wanted to say about the physical explanation, that it is a physical explanation. What I mean, so therefore there is a pregnancy with God or something. So the answer is no. The answer is God is a spiritual being and He is one. And again, Kabbalah states this again and again and again. It's a very, very important thing that a lot of people, that a lot of scholars even that do not deal with the mystic writings of Kabbalah is because of misunderstanding God in a certain way, or trying to make Him something that He isn't. So one of the things that the Kabbalistic sources themselves say, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai already talks about it in the Sefer HaZohar, in the Zohar that we said, is of not making a statue. That means not making God into a physical being. So if we talked about the right hand and the left hand that represent giving or the limits, what does that mean that God has a right hand or left hand? So if you look in the Bible, it says, for example, there's a lot of times that it says Einei Hashem, the eyes of God, or the nose of God, or the mouth of God, or the hand of God. It talks about these different body organs. So what's the answer? So the answer is that the sages already say this, that the Torah, the writings, the Torah specifically, is written in a way of Lashon Bnei Adam, a way of the language of humans, the language of us. In order for us to understand, to relate to God, we have to understand Him in a way that we understand ourselves. If it would have said that God saw, or He smelled, or He did something, and we can't really imagine Him smelling with the nose, or Him seeing with the eyes, or Him giving with the right hand or the left hand, then we wouldn't really understand the functions that He's doing, the different actions that He's doing. But at the same time, and again, this is one of the things that is a little bit more, I don't know how to say this, the opposite of physical, something very, very spiritual that is different to grasp. There's things that are
esoteric, ethereal,
right? Esoteric understanding that we don't really understand. How can it be? So God doesn't have eyes, So the answer is no, he doesn't have eyes. He doesn't have a mouth. He doesn't have a nose. So whenever the Torah is speaking about in this language, it's only for us to understand, to grasp how he reveals himself to us.
That concept I understand. That one, I actually, of all of them, that's the easiest one. We're just using words that we understand to express what's happening. But, just so that we can understand, that's not how God does it. God doesn't have eyes. God, everything is an eye. Everything is a nose. Everything is everything. So
right.
That part I get easily enough. I'm still struggling with the 70, but that's okay. So let me understand this. So for, let's just say, the traditional rabbi, whether it's Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Hasidic, they're studying the written Torah. Maybe they're going over the Talmud also, and other written sources. But when you study Kabbalah, you go beyond that. You're also studying the written oral Torah as well. And is the Zohar part of that, or is the Zohar something different?
No, that is part of it. That is part of it. It's not part of the Talmud, but it's part of the oral Torah that was given down. Right.
Okay. And is the Zohar a synonym for the oral Torah, or just one book in the oral Torah?
It's one book. It's the Kabbalistic side to the oral Torah, I would say.
And what's the other side called, or is there not a name?
Again, as we said before, it would be called, there is the Midrash, that is like the kind of, it's another facet, as we said, another level of the 4 different levels of the Torah. There's a Talmud. The Talmud is the main part of the oral Torah, if we would say. It's the main thing that most of the scholars nowadays learn. The Talmud is like the mainstream oral Torah that is learned nowadays. But again, there are different books. So, for example, as I told you, the Midrash. So the Zohar is the other one. The Jewish code of law that is taken, again, everything, it is taken from the Talmud at the end of the day. So really the Talmud is like probably the main part, which also has hidden secrets inside of it. When the Zohar talks about different things, it a lot of time quotes the Talmud also. And also Rabbi Luria that I told you that comes after, that comes 500 years ago, he also quotes a lot of times the Talmud, and he explains it in a Kabbalistic way, in a mystical way.
Has this ever been used like as a code, like this can only be decrypted by other students or experts of Kabbalah, like for survival or military or tactical purposes? I mean, it seems like something that would be a language that a cipher or the Enigma machine couldn't easily crack.
So it's interesting, yes, that there is a difference when you learn a book of somebody that knows Kabbalah because he's very, very smart, or you learn a book that somebody that knows Kabbalah because it was revealed to him in a spiritual way. And this, what I'm telling you here, I know one of the books that I learn a lot is there's a Rebbe who lived 200 years ago of Komarna. Komarna is another city in somewhere in Europe. So he wrote a book, for example. He says about himself that when he was 20 years old, he didn't know anything, but he would sit and learn. And he would try. He would make a very, very strong effort to connect to God and to learn for the sake of God. And he was very, very pious. And then at the end, he says, after a certain time of just trying to be very, very much into the Torah and trying to learn it very well, and keeping myself from all kinds of different prohibitions, suddenly I felt this light, and he started just like writing and writing and writing. And you can see from the writings that it's something that a human being cannot grasp. It's something that you can't expect from somebody to take a verse and to know its numerical value and to connect it to another numerical value of another verse. Like, it's just, imagine just taking one verse and counting word by word, counting the numerical value, and now making the same. You take the Torah, it's such a big book, and you take the different writings that come after the Torah, which is the prophets and the writings and all these different books, and just taking numerical values from here and from there, and you can see the it's something that is out of I would think it's not human to do such a thing.
Too many permutations into how the interpretations could get messed up between one person and another, and the same. So it would be Unless they're actually clones and think exactly the same, it would be very difficult. Okay. Is there anything else about Kabbalah that you want to tell us that sort of I didn't ask about, or I asked a question that took you completely offline? Because then I want to ask you some questions that may have nothing to do with it or may have something to do with it, but are I'll call them fun. I don't know if you'll think they're fun or not, but we'll see.
Okay. So yeah, there's one thing that actually interesting. When I told you about the light and the skin, right? The light being the human being as a light human being, and then having a skin. So the skin, when you write it with an ayin, in Hebrew we have an interesting thing that the vowels are not really written. Rather, they're like little dots on the bottom of the letters. So when you write the word skin, or you can also read it as iver. Iver is the same exact word, just with different vowels. So iver means blind. So what does that mean in a way? That when we see the skin of a person, we're blinded a lot of times by what is behind the person itself. So why am I saying this? Because one of the things, again, we talked about Kabbalah and everything. Who is this for? Like, who can learn Kabbalah at the end of the day? So we said if somebody fears God and somebody really wants to get close to God and everything, one of the things that it's something that is, I would say, as you asked before, like what about Madonna? What about all these different things that we hear about? The orthodox answer, the orthodox parameter that we have for that is a person has to be Jewish to learn Kabbalah. A person I'm not talking about the teachings, the general teachings of Hasidic teachings. It's for everyone. We have, when the term comes a lot, I don't know if it's a problematic term or not, but I'll say it anyways. The term comes a lot as a chosen people. What does that mean, chosen people? Does that mean we're better than anybody else? I say no, of course not. It's not about being better. It's about having responsibility. That it's something that we have a connection through the Torah to God, that He gave us the Torah. That means that we have a responsibility of using it to make a tikkun olam, to fix the world, to help the world, to bring the light into the world. So a person that is not Jewish, or a person again that is not doing it for the sake of God, that is learning this, is like taking something very special. It's like going into the house of this man and wife that we said before, and trying to have relations with one of the other one, right? It's something that is not the right way of connecting to. You want to connect to this couple because you like them a lot, so connect to them in the way that you can connect to them. Talk to them, ask them questions, or tell them to teach you something, etc. There's a lot of ways of connecting to God in this way. But if you are part of this marriage, then you do have to know your wife more. You do have to connect to your wife in a stronger way, in a more intimate way. So again, just a general thing. There are certain things that a person should know as requisites to learn Kabbalah.
Gotcha. Now that is not unique to the Jewish religion. I mean, only Muslims can go to the Kaaba stone, the cube in Mecca. Only Catholics can take communion. I mean, so that's all right. So that's fine. Okay, so some stuff that I honestly don't know how you're going to react to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. So what is, as a rabbi, and this is not necessarily tied to Kabbalah, but maybe it is. I truly have no idea. What are your feelings on like the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Book of Enoch? And
the Book of?
Enoch.
Okay, so I actually don't know about this. I don't know about the Book of Enoch. I know the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have heard of this before. I know that it was written not by Jews at the time. In other words, in the land of Israel, there were Jews at the time, and there were other groups that somehow were attached to Israel, to the land of Israel, but they weren't Jews at the time. They weren't Jews, and they wrote all these writings and they hid them over there. So it's not really a Jew. We don't see this as part of the Jewish writings. It's not part of the Jewish literature that we have. Like I haven't heard of religious scholars that learned the Dead Sea Scrolls. I know that it's like a very big historic thing and everything, but not in a Jewish way.
That's fair enough. I'm not asking you to make stuff up. Talk to a little bit that there's been, in the Book of Enoch, they talk about the giants. Now, in Genesis, depending on the translation, they talk about giants. Sometimes instead of the Nephilim, but sometimes alongside, and I don't know if that's just a translation, but what is your position on the giants, the Nephilim, one and the same, two different things, and what are they? You know, if it's two things, what are the two different things? If they're one thing, what is the one thing?
That's amazing. You're taking me a little bit into another thing that I do want to mention. That is I think it's a very, very strong point. That the way the student of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria that I just mentioned before, he was called Rav Chaim Vital, and he has a full book that talks a lot about how a person can achieve closeness to God. And one of the things that he says, he asks the question, who is bigger, an angel or a Jew, a soul of a Jew? So he says that the soul is bigger than an angel. So he brings proof for it. He says, when God created the world, he created the angels appear in the giants appear in the Torah. So when do they appear? They appear towards the end of before Noah's Ark, right? It happened to be that mankind went astray, went off the way that God wanted the world to happen. So what really happened over there? So he explains that these giants are also called Bnei Elokim. They're called the sons of God. And Elokim is not only the word for God, it's also used as a word for angels. So he says that these giants were actually the sons of angels that came down to the world. So what do you mean angels? Why did they come down to the world? So actually God tested these angels and he said, okay, you're talking about mankind, that man is not okay, he's doing a lot of bad things and everything. Let's see you. I'll throw you into this world and let's see how you deal with this world. And he actually let them come down to this world, and they saw the human woman, that were very pretty in their eyes, and so you can imagine what happened afterwards, and there were giants born. So says Rav Chaim Vital, that the student of the Arizal of Rav Yitzchak Luria, so he says that we see here that the angels couldn't deal with the temptations, with the bad guy again, with the bad inclination of that we have. They couldn't deal with the temptations of those worlds the way that we can deal with them. So when you put an angel into this world, you would think he's so spiritual, he's going to do amazing. And the answer is no. We have an amazing soul. Our soul is even bigger than the angel, than the soul of an angel. So how do we deal in this world? It's very difficult. So we have the laws, we have the different laws. We have to stay away from all kinds of things. We have to guard our eyes. We have to guard ourselves. We have to guard all the time to have these limits that we set for ourselves, that the sages set for us. They helped us set for ourselves. So, but you can see the point is, you can see the difference there is between a soul and an angel. An angel, we would think he's more spiritual, and the answer is no. The soul is more spiritual. Only that because it's in this world and it has all the physical world around us, it's very difficult. But at the same time, we have a very big potential.
So an angel became a Nephilim once it was down on earth and gave in to temptation. And the giant is the offspring of that. Now, they also, in the same class, they said something, they were the men of renown, the heroes of old, something like that. So were there giants that came that turned out not so good, and were there giants that came out good?
I don't know if we find giants that came out good, but we do find giants that were inhabitants of in the earth. And you do find, for example, Moses dealing with one of the giants and killing him after. Actually, we do find Goliath, for example, that he was also kind of a giant. I don't know of any source that talks about good giants. They were probably like.
Well, they said they were the heroes of old, or the men of renown, or maybe both, indicating at some point that these giants were. I mean, I guess renown and heroes doesn't need to be good in the language of thousands of years ago, but it is now.
In Hebrew, we don't find the word heroes for giants.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay, so it's the English, maybe possibly mistranslation somewhere between the Old Hebrew and New Hebrew and Seleucid Greek and Latin and English and Old English and New English and so forth and so on. Okay. All right, I think you already answered this, but I mean, you already said what the angels are. Are demons the same things, or are demons just angels that went bad, or we don't use that word?
So demons, they are mentioned in the Torah, in the oral Torah. They're mentioned a lot. It says up to the point where there's like thousands of them. around every person. It's like bad spiritual beings that are around us. It's very interesting that when you hear about near-death experiences, there's so many, there's hundreds or thousands probably in the web nowadays. A person can make a search and you hear all these stories about people going up and seeing this light. Yeah, when the soul like detaches itself from the body, and it starts seeing all these spiritual bad demons, kind of creatures that are around them and shouting or doing all kinds of things. It's a scary thought. The Talmud says that if a person would actually see them, he wouldn't be able even to live because he would be in such fear all the time. Imagine having all this terrorists around you all the time, just like shouting out or something. So yeah, there is a thing. Demons. We try not to think about it too much, because if so, like, a person will live in fear all of his life. So it's not the point at all.
So we've got the cicadas now. I don't know if they're out there.
I've heard about them. Never seen them.
It feels like it. Yeah, they're kamikazes. They fly into the windows all the time. Yeah. So demons are not fallen angels. They're a different thing altogether. They're malevolent spirits of various sizes, but they're basically surrounding us and just out of sight. They're maybe a thing that goes bump in the night or the bad thoughts, but they're not fallen angels. Okay. Now I've got some other. Okay. So when I was a kid, and this may be what is the genesis, pun intended, of this show, is I would read Genesis because I didn't want to pay attention to services, and it didn't matter what house of worship I was in. I wasn't listening. It didn't matter if I was at a Catholic wedding or if I was at a friend's bar mitzvah or a confirmation or whatever it was. I just flip it open and I'd read it. So I was fixated on this Nephilim and this giants thing, and I never really squared that. But even before that, we have Cain and Abel. So Cain kills Abel, and he gets banished. Now, by my count, you have Adam, you have Eve. I'm not even going to talk about Lilith because I think that's in the Book of Enoch stuff. I think so. That's outside. So we've got Adam and Eve, persons 1 and 2. So person 3 would be Abel. Person 4 would be Cain. I know Seth came later. So person 1 gets killed by person 2. Person 3 gets killed by person 4. So now person 4 gets banished to the land of Nod where there's goat herders. So who named this land Nod, and who are these goat herders if there's no people?
First of all, the sages say that one of the things that Cain killed Hebel. Am I saying the names right? That's in the way you said in Hebrew, Cain and Hebel. The reason that he killed him was because Hebel was born with two twin sisters, and Cain was born with one twin sister. So he had, how do you say this feeling? Kina, I forgot the word. Like, why him two and me one?
He was jealous.
Yeah, he was jealous of him. So that's jealousy made him kill him at the end. So that means that they did have, or he, Hebel was killed before he ever got married, whatever. And back then they would get married with the twin sisters because that's what it was back then. So Cain actually had children with this twin sister, and again, that's humankind came to be because of them.
Okay. And so they had some kids, and the kids went off, and because people were living 800, 1,000 years back then, or maybe even longer, there may have been tons and tons of people, and some of them settled not and were raised. Okay, so it wasn't like a 14-year-old killed or 12-year-old killed a 14-year-old. There was like a 140-year-old killed his 165-year-old brother, and then they may have had many generations of great-grandchildren, great-great-great-great-grandchildren in there. Okay, all right. Well, that fair enough. That's as good an explanation as any.
It's interesting. I'll just say a point about it. That Cain and Hevel, in Hebrew, Cain comes from the word kinyan. Kaniti shet Hashem. That's what Eve says. That I have acquired. Acquired something, kinyan, like acquiring something is in a physical way. And Hebel is what comes out of the mouth when you go like, when you breathe out. So it's the word Hebel. It's like something very, very spiritual. So the fact that a physical killed the spiritual, what we're trying to do nowadays is exactly do the tikkun or fix that killing of the spiritual by bringing the spiritual back into the physical and make them live together. It's an interesting Hasidic concept, Kabbalistic concept.
So the parable is the literal is also a parable.
Right. All through the Torah we see that all the time. That's one of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, was that everything is, I forgot the word, everything is relevant nowadays.
Well, it ties into the duality that I think you pretty much opened up with. All right, no pressure on this one. What is the Jewish version of Revelations?
Revelations.
Or the remember it, reckoning, Judgment Day, whatever the Jewish version of that is. What is it?
Okay, wait. There's different things. There's Revelations as seeing the spiritual in the physical world. Or there's Judgment Day as when a person passes away from this world? Which one are you?
Bigger than that. You mentioned the word in the context of when the bad guy, when the badness gets stripped from the bad guy. I don't want to say his name. Lucifer,
okay. So that would be would that be the redemption? Is that the word?
Maybe that's what you used.
Okay, so we're waiting. We've been waiting for all this time for the perfection of the world. It can't be if we see the world. If you look at the world as a goal of being in this world, people want to live a long life. Why? If there's such sufferings in this world, and everybody knows people that are sick, people that have problems, people that have all kinds of different problems nowadays. There are a lot more problems than there were before, probably. And then psychological and medical, whatever it is, and wars in the world and everything. So it can't be that this world is a goal. This world is somehow some kind of channel that we go through in order to get to another place. So that other place is called the coming world, Olam Haba, the world to come. When we talk about the world to come, there's two different things about it. One is the spiritual world, that is when a soul leaves the body. So it gets to a place where it's like the final place of resting, right? The body decays, the body is buried, but the soul goes up to the next world. That's the world to come. The world that comes afterwards is the olam, the world of the soul, where only the soul is there, and it enjoys the light of God. But there's another thing that is a perfection of this world. That is a day that we're waiting for. We believe in the coming the Messiah, of the real Messiah. It's somebody that's gonna bring the world into perfection, the world into a place where there's not gonna be any more sickness, any more wars, any more people being better than others, or people oppressing others. Rather, it's gonna be a place with harmony. The prophets talk about how the wolf is gonna be living with the sheep, and they're gonna be living together, and one is not gonna eat the other one. It could be a parable and not a parable. There's a different ways of seeing this, but in a general way, the world is going to come to a perfection where we're not going to have any of these problems anymore. And how do we come to this? By getting back to the place where we belong to, getting back to our spiritual roots, getting back to the relation with God, getting back to being good human beings, to being attached to God in a real way.
Okay, well that's it sounds easy, but obviously we haven't gotten there yet.
It's a tough world.
And in the Jewish religion, am I correct? There's no heaven and hell.
There is something called Gan Eden, that is heaven, and hell is not a bad place. Rather, it's a process. It's like, for example, you have you use a shirt, and either the shirt gets very, very filthy, or it doesn't get very filthy, or it doesn't get filthy at all. If it doesn't get filthy at all, when you take it off, you see it, you smell it, it smells perfectly well, there's no problem with it, you put it back in the closet, everything's okay. That is when a soul comes out to this world and he doesn't do anything wrong. I still haven't met a person like that, and the sages tell us that there is no person like that. Even a very just person has to fall a lot of times. But the question is, how filthy does it get? If the person does a lot of sins and stays with those sins and he doesn't repent them, so at the end of the life, then it's very, very dirty. So what does it have to do? You have to put it in the laundry. Now, if it's very, very filthy, you have to take it to a special laundry. And that laundry is not easy. The laundry is called Gehenom in Hebrew, or in English it would be like it would be hell. So it's not a bad place where it's going to stay there forever. It could stay there forever if it was like a very, very bad soul, if it did very, very bad things. I don't think your listeners are these kinds of people. And even so, if a person repents and he stops doing what he's doing bad, and he starts repenting his ways and correcting his ways, in 1 second, even the sages say, in 1 second, he can actually clean himself up to the point where when he passes away, he doesn't have to go through this hell, through this laundry mat, whatever it's called. So that's pretty much.
It's like a trip to the MVA. You know, sometimes you go there and everything goes just right. You get the right person. Other times, everything goes wrong. And if you don't lose your temper and you're polite and eventually you get to the right supervisor, you can find your way out. But if you're like me and you lose your cool and whatever, you can find yourself waiting E14, then E14 turns into F12, and then F12 turns into A32, and you might be there all day long because they're trying to make a point out of it. So yes, once again, we learned that hell and the MVA are the same place. But
just one thing about it, though, that the way that a person passes through this world, let's say that it happened, all of this happened to you, and at the same time you have a friend that got there, and he was greeted by one of the NBA stars, and he said, "Wait, you look like my brother. I want you to have first row seats," and he goes to the first row seats. So at the end of the day, you would think, okay, so I went to hell and he goes to paradise. So the answer is no, not at all. You went through a very, very bumpy life where your I want to say exams, you dealt with very difficult things that he didn't have to deal with. So that means that he didn't have things to fix in this world. So he's not going to be in a better place than you. You're probably going to be in a much better place than him at the end. Why? Because he went through all these tests, but he passed them. Or you didn't pass some of them, but it doesn't matter. You fought. You wanted to pass him. So that it all starts with the right mindset. The mindset is we have to try to be as good as possible. That we fall a lot of times. We do a lot of bad things. But at the end of the day, it depends where our focus is, where our mindset is.
So everyone be nice at the MVA. You can't win. Okay, so that is a bit of the trivial. I had this is it, and again, this is a bit of a doozy, but those angels in Sodom, how'd that happen? How'd they let that happen?
In Sodom?
Yeah, like shouldn't they have been able to, like, if they want to, shouldn't they have been able to dispatch of the lowly humans easily enough, or did they sort of want it to happen?
You can see that humankind can just fall in a very, very low way. It's very, very difficult. I agree with you. It's very difficult to understand, like, how could it be that humankind can just go astray? Or if it's the angels, again, I think it's dumb. There were people over there. It wasn't like really angels. It was like people. But you can see the bad inclination of a person can take him just to the worst places possible. Okay.
Well, yeah, well, I guess God got mad that time. Very much so. All right. Well, listen, I thank you for your indulgence. I thank you for your patience. I thank you for your flexibility with me in doing this. I may call upon you again if I have more focused questions or whatever the case may be. But thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. I'm confused, but at least I know what I should be confused about, which is progress. So again, stay safe out there. It was just, I mean, it's not fascinating to you, but it's fascinating to me that you're from Mexico and then found your way to Israel, and you know, we always spoke in English, so you know, it took me by surprise, but it's a nice little surprise. So cool. All right.
It's my pleasure. Just one thing, I want to say something that if somebody has a feeling that he wants to know more about this thing, it's one of these things that even if you don't like the answer, always keep searching. There's a lot of questions over there. There's a lot of answers over there. If I don't know if anybody wants to contact me or search the web or something for all these answers, I would say there's one rabbi called Rabbi Alon Anava that he's very famous. Also, he has a lot of talks about this topic.
You probably spell it.
It's ALONANAVA.
Yeah, and I didn't know if you wanted to invite people to contact you, but if you do, how would somebody contact you to?
I would be happy to. I can give my telephone number. You can contact me through WhatsApp, or I can give you my mail. And my email is. I'll give my email. My email is David Lev. It's DOVID, as in David, just with an O, LEV, small v, LEV, @gmail.com. Or my phone number is 972. That's the Israel thing that you say before. You put before 972, and the phone is 54-555-3179. And just don't call me in the middle of the night. You can always send a message, and I will be very, very happy to assist you if I can.
And just remember, for those of you who are that Israel is in its own time zone, so be wary of its time zone. And I know I do have listeners all over the world. So check your time zone, because I'm not going to presume that all or even most of you are on the East Coast of the U.S., because I actually don't think that that's the case. All right. Again, thanks very much. If you don't mind, I'm just going to give my goodbyes to the folks, and because I'm not sure how Skype works if we hang up, if it stops the recording automatically. So just bear with me through this. But folks, obviously, I hope that you learned a lot. I, of course, listen back to all my shows. A lot of times when you're doing a show, you're thinking about your own thoughts. So I always listen back, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot more. But very interesting stuff. I know I generally try to tell you what the upcoming shows are. Truth be told, I've been too successful in booking. And at this moment in time, we are, by the way, happy Father's Day, Rabbi. We're recording on Father's Day. Most of you might know that I dropped a show yesterday. And I usually record on Sundays. So I now have 4 recorded shows, which is the best problem in the world for a podcaster. The problem is that I don't have any or that many open dates yet as far as Sundays. I'm booking like a madman. So now I have to sort of root for some emergencies, like people to flake out on me, which will happen. So I don't know when I'm dropping shows, but I'm definitely dropping this next. This is going to be episode 51. That's why I started with episode 51. The only thing I know for sure is that July 18th is our next panel show on Land of the Lost with my little group of panelists. But in the near future, there's a show from a holistic homeopathic practitioner. There's going to be a show on scripture from an evangelical perspective, tying it to science fiction. I have a show which hopefully, I don't want to jinx myself by saying on the air, but some of you who are wrestling fans, and some of you know me from wrestling, but known as PJ Gabriel, he was in the Nexus and the Core. His name is PJ Black. He still wrestles. He's from South Africa. And hopefully, if we arrange it, we're going to talk about African mythology and ancient civilization mythos with PJ. And we're not going to talk about wrestling with him, or at least not that much. So this is all the stuff that's coming up, plus the other things that I have planned for recording. So heaven knows, maybe the rabbi can send a prayer for me or something when I'm going to start dropping these things. But this show will be 51. So by the time you're hearing this, you'll be like, why is he going on and on about this? But that's because at that point, I will have at least 3 already recorded shows, if not 4 or 5. So, hey, good for me. But I guess I should start getting used to people saying yes as opposed to saying no. So anyway, the rabbi's been very kind in wading through this. You all heard why. So thank you for coming to the Garden of Doom. We will hear from you next time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And since the rabbi's here, we're going to say Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Shalom.
choice. I hear your voice, feels like flying. I close my eyes. Oh God, I think I'm falling out of the sky. I close my eyes. Heaven help me when you call my name. It's like a little prayer. I'm down on my knees. I wanna take you there in the midnight hour. I can feel your power, just like a prayer. You know I'll take you there like a child. You